Hi everyone, here's a video to help you understand Quarter 2 Homework 7, which is the next set of proofs that are a little bit more challenging than the proofs from the first homework. So where do we start when we're doing our proofs? We start with the given. So first thing that I'm going to do is copy paste the first thing that I am given. My reason is that it's given, and I don't see a congruent symbol. So I'm going to label this given statement, and then we need a follow-up step. So FDN is bisected, so I need to go arc at the D, and that will be my follow-up step. I'm going to name those angles with 3 letters. The D is going to be my middle letter. So angle FDU is congruent to angle NDU. And now I will have a congruent pair of things to add to my list. My reason, I look up at step 1 and see what the vocabulary word that it was that I used. It was bisect, so I have an angle bisector. And what was I just proving? Congruent angles or congruent segments? Those were congruent angles. So now I'm officially done with the first given, and I'm ready to move on to the second given, which is also going to need a follow-up step. So it says segment FN is perpendicular to segment UD. It's been a little while since we've used the perpendicular symbol. Perpendicular lines form right angles. So what I'm going to do is find where FN and UD meet, which is at the U, and I'm going to make right angle symbols. So my follow-up step is that those 2 angles at the U are congruent to each other. So U needs to be my middle letter. So angle FUD is congruent to angle NUD. I'm going to highlight that in blue. That's going to be my second pair of congruent things in my proof. And when I come up with my reason, I'm going to look at the step up above and see what my vocabulary word is. It's a symbol. It's perpendicular. So I'm going to say perpendicular lines. What did they form? Take a look at number 4. Are those congruent angles or congruent segments? They are 2 congruent angles. All right, I'm out of givens, so now I'm at the point where there's probably either vertical angles, but not in this case because it's not an X or a bow tie looking picture, or there's a reflexive shared side, and that is what we have in this case. I'm going to put an S on it. I'm going to highlight that in pink, and that is going to be my last thing that I need to prove the triangles congruent to each other. So segment UD is congruent to segment UD by the reflexive property. And now I have my 3 pairs of things in order to prove the triangles congruent to each other. Didn't give us what names we're going to use, so I can name the first triangle however I want. I'm going to name it FUD. And then the second triangle I need to name based on that, so I'm going to call it NUD. The reason for congruent triangles, that's when we use our side, 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 or side, angle, or angle, angle, side. This one is angle, side, angle. And then how do I know where to end the proof? Well, it always tells you. DF and DN. Are those segments in our congruent triangles? Yes, they are. So they are congruent to each other by CPCTC. All right, let's try the second proof as well. So now we do have a bow tie looking picture, so I bet we're going to use vertical angles somewhere. Before then, though, let me start with my first given. S is the midpoint of TR. Given. Is there a congruent symbol in there? There is not. So I need to mark that on my picture. We mark midpoints by finding TR and going tick, tick, and that is my follow-up step that I need to name. So I'm going to call those segments TS and SR. So now I have a pair of congruent things. My reason, I'm going to look up above at step 1 and pick out what the vocabulary word is. It's midpoint. Then I'm going to look at the statement that I just made. Were those congruent segments or congruent angles? They were 2 congruent segments. All right, I'm done with that given. On to the next given. Angle Q is congruent to angle P. That congruent symbol has me hopeful that I'm not going to need a follow-up step. Let me see if those are actually angles in my triangle picture. Angle Q and angle P, they sure are. So I don't need a follow-up step. So that's kind of nice. This one's going to be a step shorter than the last one because one of the givens needed a follow-up. One of the givens didn't. Once again, we find ourselves in a position where we're out of givens, so we're going to look for either reflexive property or vertical angles. Whenever I see an X kind of shape, I see that I can find vertical angles which are congruent to each other. They're at the S, so I need to make sure that S is my middle letter when I'm naming the angles. So I'm going to go with TSQ and PSR. The order that I name the angles doesn't really matter, except that the S has to be the middle letter. We said that those were vertical angles. That's not enough on its own, though. What about vertical angles? They're congruent to each other. So I'm going to say vertical angles to congruent angles. That is my third thing. So now I have 3 sets of markings, so I'm ready to do my congruent triangles. So I can name the first one however I want. I'm going to go triangle TSQ. Then the other triangle, I need to see what the T goes with. It's the R. The S goes with S, and the Q goes with P. My reason for congruent triangles, that's where the side angle side stuff comes in. This one has 2 angles and a side. The side is not in between the 2 angles, so this is when we use angle, angle, side. And then how do I know where to end the proof? It tells me, are PR and TQ corresponding sides in those congruent triangles? Yes, they are. So PR is congruent to TQ, and that is because of CPCTC. Hopefully you're finding these videos helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye.